Welcome to my session on working with the principles of design. I'm Sonia Meyer and I am a graphic designer for Trident. In this session we're going to go back to basics and really try and nut out what exactly makes design work. More specifically, how can we get design to make sense in the context of data visualization for Cognos, where a user is presented with constantly changing data so that they can properly understand the information that they're viewing with as little effort as possible to help fuel better decision making. So what can you take from this? You'll appreciate the importance of a pragmatic approach to the design of a dashboard interface and the visualization of your data. You'll also understand when to balance this with creative insights and how this informs better decision making in the design process. So, contrary to popular belief, design isn't all about creativity and artistic flair. There's a practical framework to design that is the same for all design disciplines, so it's very universal. By understanding this, you can take away some of the creative guesswork that can be paralyzing in visualizing your data in a way that works aesthetically. So you'll also learn how to better engage a user or audience. I'll explore the ways we comprehend what we see and how changing one or two things can make this comprehension much easier and more straightforward. You'll see how easy it is also to create consistency between the way your data looks, the way your dashboard interface looks, and your company brand, tying it all together in an easy to recognize format. So I suppose the most important thing, or one of the most important things in design, and the first thing anyone will learn in a design course, are the principles of design. So these are balance, harmony and unity, similarity and contrast, emphasis, scale, proportion, and hierarchy. The principles of design define the structure and general configuration of any successful design. Like I said, they're very universal. If you look at something around you that's been designed, whether it's a user interface, a poster, a logo, a chair, or anything at all, and it looks wrong or strange in some way, chances are that whoever created it missed a valuable component of what I'll go through with you today. So for designers, I suppose over time these principles become kind of like second nature. You don't think about them, you just know that they're influencing your decision making as you work through the conceptual process. So to begin with, I'm going to start with balance. Balancing something that's visual is kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. It's about distributing elements across the design to create a layout or a composition that is visually appealing. So you have to pay attention to things like the alignment of elements. So the more gridded your design looks, the more balanced it will be. Spacing between the elements, the relationship between the different sizes of elements on the page, and how differences in tone can change the depth of a design. So, for example, darker tones and colours will always appear denser than lighter tones, drawing your energy or your attention to the heaviness in that space. So think about balance in a more 3D way than 2D way. Two-dimensional design is never truly flat, there's always some sort of movement going on. Balance in design is kind of like a visual interpretation of the gravity of the design. If it looks heavy in one corner, the best way to balance this is by putting something heavy in the opposite corner. So there are three types of balance, and these are symmetrical, asymmetrical, and off balance. And yes, strangely enough, off balance is also a way of balancing design. But only if it's done correctly, obviously. When I am designing a dashboard layout, I try to stick to the first two. Symmetrical when all the charts and boxes are a similar shape and size, and asymmetrical when I'm working with a range of different shaped or sized elements. In designing for Cognos, I really try to steer clear of creating an off-balance layout. I find the medium in this environment more suited to symmetrical and asymmetrical because it generally makes the information more simplified, which is exactly what you want to achieve when working with analytics. So what happens if you are working with, for example, you might have not enough charts to fit on a page. You might have a small and a large graph only. what would you do in this case? Your only option might be to work with an off-balance layout, but my first instinct instead would be to question whether it would be possible to alter the sizes of the charts slightly to create a more asymmetrical design, move things around a little bit. Or perhaps you could utilise the space and balance it out a bit better by adding a comment section or something else. So be a bit creative with it. It's important to know, though, when to use the different balance scenarios. I'm more likely to use an off-balance design if I were designing, for example, a page in an annual report where you have a lot of text-based information and more, and it's sort of more interesting and engaging for the reader if the placement of the text and images is a bit more creative. Moving on to harmony and unity. Harmony in design sort of refers to the way all the components in a design relate to and complement the other parts. So you could think of this as, I guess, what defines the overall design style, and it's important to understand the need for strength through consistency. So to make a visual design harmonious, you have to think about things like the consistent use of certain colour combinations, the repetition of patterns and elements in the design. Harmony can also be achieved through the use of similar shapes to define certain elements when compared to others. Unity, as opposed to harmony, refers more to the organisation of the whole design. Is the design unified? So organisation in terms of how can you create the greatest understanding and remove anything that is confusing. Keep it simple as possible, and it will be unified. Harmony can also be considered in broader terms, though. For example, how the design might work within the overall brand and in this particular context. In this example of an actual dashboard, I'll just go through a few things. You can see here the consistent use of this rounded edge. This creates harmony in the design because it's repeated throughout. You can also see how it's got a very simple but effective colour scheme, and this header, this colour in the blue, for example, is repeated. Sorry, this blue colour in the header is repeated in the icons as well as the text. So it's important to sort of repeat colours, keep it consistent. And you can also see how this chart box here, with the darker header colour, it is repeated also, so there's repetition of this in the design. There's 3 boxes, and I suppose repetition also works sort of as like a process of elimination, because see how this box here doesn't actually have the same design, so automatically the user or the viewer can see that it doesn't exactly fit in the same category as the others. But what about branding in general? We all, I guess, know that branding is not just a logo or a design style. It's about much more than that. The consolidated values of internal and external stakeholders, company vision, adaptability and sustainability. So how does this translate when designing for analytics? I always try to think about the user experience, and I would ask myself this question: what will the user want to achieve, not just in the short term, but in the long term? And how can design make this easy and articulate brand values and vision? So if a brand is about all of these things that I just mentioned, it should be observed through every process, the click of a button or the toggle between information. The best way to work on this particular path, and with this vision in mind, is to design to suit the current visual style that's already in place. This way you won't go off track and create a style that doesn't work as part of the whole. Work with any existing digital or print branding graphics, shapes and colour schemes, and aim for consistency and familiarity across all the media to further embed this visual style. Recognition alone should sort of be a good starting point to make the information presented to the user easier to digest, I suppose. So what happens though when there's no particular branded style to work with? You can I would create a simple palette of analogous or complementary colours that we'll work on all graphs and charts. Stick to just a few colours to keep everything tied together and uncomplicated. If some graphs or charts call for a more comprehensive range of colours, develop a secondary palette that the developer can draw from to use in this case, and make sure that this complements the primary style and colour scheme of the design. If the intended users are familiar with using certain colours for particular metrics in their current or previous reporting, there's no need to really change this if it's not absolutely necessary. So to encourage a better user experience, I like to try and avoid teaching the user new things. Not that, people aren't clever in learning new things, like we have to learn a lot of new things every day in this digital age. But I think it's better to keep it simple, and if it's not necessary, don't make people learn new things. Instead, I look at ways of just altering what's already recognised colours to make them harmonious with the rest of the design. So, for example, in this older report, you can see this dirty brown colour here that's used in the charts, but I don't think it's very harmonious with the colour scheme that's going on here. So in adapting that colour scheme to create a new design, I've actually used instead a kind of burgundy colour. And it's very similar to the older colour, so I guess the idea is that the user won't have to relearn this. They'll still have the same amount of recognition when they look at the new report. But it fits much better in with the overall design. It's much more harmonious. So moving on to similarity and contrast. Too much similarity in a design kind of appears bland and dull because elements really start to bleed together and they have no real purpose. Nothing stands up. It's important to show contrast between elements to keep the viewer really engaged and able to move their eyes easily from section to section. But you must also show some similarity to ensure that the design does have some consistency and familiarity between components, otherwise it looks messy. So ways to create a good contrast include things like tonal variations of a single colour, using more than one colour, contrast in direction of lines and gradients, use of different textures, for example, a shadow or a pattern, alteration of positioning, so don't always place everything on the left, contrast it with some things on the right, contrast the size of elements, and the use of various shapes. Contrast really creates the impact in a design, so it works best when elements are completely different, because if you make something just a little bit different, it can be confused as a mistake. For example, if you're choosing fonts for something, if you were to choose two slightly different fonts, but different, it's going to look far worse than if you were to choose two completely different but complementary fonts that work well together. Now I just want to show an example of how I work with contrast and similarity. I'll just get my pen. You can see here that when it comes to contrast in shape, in this design there are some very sharp rectangle elements, and these are contrasted with rounded elements. But there is also some similarity in that the rounded elements are repeated throughout the design. You can see it here, you can see it on these headline boxes, and in here and in the legend. So the same sort of thing happens with texture in this design. You can see that in the header bar there is a shadow on the bar, which kind of makes it pop out a little bit because it's very contrasted from the very flat white background of the chart. But there's also a similarity in the design in that this textured element, this shadow, is repeated throughout the design, and it's also in the footer. So it hasn't just been used once, it's consistent. There's also a contrast in direction. You can see this in the text. So there's a lot of horizontal text, but there's also some angled text here, so it keeps it interesting, keeping text contrasted. But if you think about direction in terms of the rectangle boxes that are used in this design, you can see that they're all going in the exact same direction. There's none that are vertical, they're all horizontal, so it keeps it very consistent and clean. There's also a lot of tonal variations between the actual data elements, the changeable information here, on top of a very white background. So it's very dark, the background is very white. And this means that, I mean, think about if this background was a little bit darker in tone, it would just blend in, it wouldn't stand out as much. But there is consistency and similarity in this as well, in that all of the charts use this same tonal change between the elements in the foreground and elements in the background. So now I'll go through emphasis. Emphasis is really just is used to create a focal point in a design. Creating too much emphasis sort of gives the appearance that the design is very busy and very noisy, I suppose. So it's important to create emphasis only for the things that need to be noticed. In Cognos, this is often whatever information is important to the user at the time. Because of the nature of a dashboard, it's better to emphasize elements in the data visuals rather than the dashboard interface itself. So you can do this through variations in text sizes and weights, such as making something bold to stand out. For example, making some drillable content bold, because then the person's going to notice it and realise straight away that you can drill through. You can also create colour changes to create emphasis, such as our commonly used traffic light system for green, amber and red, which you can see here in this example. And this really shows the user what needs attention. It emphasises those important things when they first look at the dashboard. Other things that create emphasis are spacing and isolation, so you can isolate something to make it stand out. The more negative space there is around it, the more it will stand out. And placement and direction, if it appears that all the lines in the design are sort of pointed towards a certain focal point, then it probably means that whatever's in that focal point is important. I also just wanted to show some examples of how to emphasize text. It's very straightforward, but it's so often done wrong. I guess as a general rule, it's important to really only use a maximum of 2 different approaches to emphasising anything. So ways that you can do it are obviously bold, you can italicize something, make it larger than things around it, capitalise it, or reverse it out from its background. I'll show some examples of this. In this one, you can see that it's both large and capitalised, and in this one, it is bold and italicized. So this is what I mean by just 2 things. This one is reversed and bold, and this is an example of just a big no-no. It kind of reminds me of something I probably did, I don't know, in high school on an assignment in Microsoft Word or something, like, look at this really important header, and you would stylize everything, and it's really not necessary. I think it's really important just to keep it simple, because if everything looks like this, it just makes it so messy and you don't know where to look, it's too loud. So yeah, it's a good rule to stick with, the 2 approaches. Now, for scale and proportion, in the art world, there's actually a mathematic sort of calculation that can be done to create a perfectly proportioned composition in art. Renaissance artists, specifically Da Vinci, called this the divine proportion, because he believed it's like in everything around us, and therefore it must have come from God. Proper proportion and scale can greatly improve the way a design communicates its message. So that's what I want to go through here. Take, for example, this the beautiful realist art of sculptor Ron Newark. I feel like these would have a completely different effect on the viewer, or perhaps no effect at all, if they were life-sized instead of giant or tiny. Even though Ron is an incredibly talented and detailed sculptor, it's actually the sheer scale of them that makes them so important, so special, so impacting. So size really and scale really communicates a lot. This shape, for example, is made up of a large rectangle and a small rectangle. This shape is also made up of a large and a small rectangle, but for some reason it's much more appealing to look at. So why is this? If you look at it in detail, the top box is actually just half the size of the bottom box. And even if we put it next to a symmetrical shape, suddenly the symmetrical shape looks far more boring and monotonous. So I guess what I'm getting at here is we're attracted to things that are in proportion, like this second shape has the same measurements, but not exactly the same, because then it becomes monotonous, it becomes boring. As another example, in creating some traffic light shapes for a dashboard chart, I noticed that when I made all the shapes the exact same height and width, the red square shape looked far bigger than the triangle and the circle shape. Of course, this is because the square holds more volume, so it takes up more space inside the square dimensions. And so a simple resize in this case made each of the shapes look far more closely related, more harmonious, more in proportion. Another example is this actual dashboard. When I was designing this, I actually didn't realise that I was doing it, so it does show how these things become a bit like second nature. When I pull it apart, I can see that this shape here is actually just half the size of this height here. This whole header bar here is the exact same height as the chart, the height in the charts. This spacing here is 1.5 times exactly the spacing here. And if you take out these, I'm sure it would be exactly the same, so it's very balanced. So to move on, I want to go through hierarchy. Hierarchy is very similar to emphasis, but it's more about the order of flow and movement in the design, rather than just what's important in the design. So we don't want the user to stop dead. We want them to be engaged. It dictates the order of our user experience, I suppose. So this movement can be created through a few things, like the gradation of tones, size changes, and positioning is a really big one. In user experience design for e-commerce stores, something as simple as moving an order button about 20 pixels to the left or the right or up or down across the page can make a massive difference in sales for the company. There are known cases where this has happened, and it's been amazing. I just also want to show an example of what I mean by gradation in tone. In this chart here, you've got the header bar is actually a darker grey than the chart itself, and the text in the header bar is slightly larger than most of the text in the chart. So it draws your attention straight to the top, and this is the direction that we want the person to look at this chart in, so that they actually get the information about what the chart is before they see the chart itself. Moving over to this example, even though these headline boxes here are much smaller than some of the other boxes, I would automatically look to the top and feel like these are important because the text is quite large, there's space around them, so they seem important. So again, the user is probably going to view this from the top to the bottom, despite the changes in colour here, the changes in tone. So it can work in a few different ways, and it's a matter of getting that balance right, I suppose. And I just want to finish up by showing you something called the F pattern. So this was recorded using an eye movement detector, which is like a super expensive piece of technology, but all recordings show pretty much the same thing, which is that we always view things, or at least in the Western world, I'm sure it's very different in other parts of the world, from left to right and top to bottom. I mean, obviously we read from left to right, but this is the way that we've come to look at things, or to consume things, I suppose. So you can see here that whoever's looking at this has sort of gazed across here, slowly gone down and lost interest a little bit. Had a quick look over here, but mostly just lost interest down the bottom. So in terms of hierarchy, positioning in itself is incredibly important, because this is the pattern that most of us will use to move through something. So as a general rule, I would say the most important thing should always appear at the top left to make it easier and more straightforward for someone to find the information that they need when they're looking at something. Anyway, so that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed an in-depth look at how the principles of design can be used to create user-friendly data visualizations and dashboard interfaces in Cognos.